Howdy, my name is Carlos Daniel, and today we'll be discussing the introduction to the immune system and the innate immunity. The immune system can be separated into two types of immunity. This being innate immunity, which is what we are born with, and adaptive immunity, which is what we build up through our lifetimes and encounters with pathogens. The innate immunity consists not only of physical and chemical barriers such as our skin, tears, and stomach acid, but also from phagocytes such as neutrophils, which are the most abundant red white blood cell in the body, and macrophages, which are another type of phagocyte that ingests microbes and destroys them. NK cells, or natural killer cells, are part of this system too and act by recognizing abnormal MHC1 receptors and kill the cell displaying abnormalities via apoptosis. And finally, the innate system also composes of the complement system, which is a set of proteins that helps destroy microbes, as well as the cytokines, which are also proteins that serve as immune cell communicators. Adaptive immunity is not as fast and develops over days. In comparison, though, it does develop immunological memory, meaning that at the time of a second attack of an infection, it will act much stronger, granting the host immunity. There are two types of components to the adaptive immunity. That is the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes. B lymphocytes fight off infections by producing antibodies that can neutralize pathogens. Meanwhile, helper T leukocytes help activate other immune cells. Cytotoxic T lymphocytes kill infected host cells. This type of immunity can be divided into two types. The humoral, meaning it is mediated by the B cell and its antibodies, and cell-mediated immunity, which composes of T cells tasks. Although there are two types of immunities, they don't work without one another. This is because innate immunity triggers adaptive immunity. This happens by dendritic cells capturing microbes and traveling to a lymph node where it presents the antigen to a naive lymphocyte, T lymphocyte, and triggers adaptive responses. Immune cells usually reside in lymphoid organs such as bone marrow, where the maturation of B lymphocytes occurs, the thymus, where the maturation of T lymphocytes occurs, and secondary lymphoid organs where they reside once they are mature, such as the lymph nodes, the spleen, and mucosal tissue.
How the innate immune system recognizes microbes and damage. First, there are PRRs, which are pattern recognition receptors. These are essentially alarm sensors that detect common patterns amongst pathogens. For example, I drew here a cell with a PRR here, detecting a pathogen or a piece of a pathogen. The type of pathogens or the type of molecules that they recognize are pathogen-associated molecular patterns, otherwise known as PAMPs. These can be like flagellum of a bacteria, or like a lipopolysaccharide, or things that typically don't appear inside the normal animal body. There's also damage-associated molecular patterns, which are similar to PAMPs, except that these are specifically things that occur within the body, but typically shouldn't appear normally, such as ATP, which is typically only found within the cell. There's a couple different cells in the components of in the immune system. There's neutrophil, which is it's the most abundant cell, and it quickly responds to infection. It can do phagocytosis and something called netosis, where it releases its chromatin. There's also macrophages and monocytes. Monocytes can become macrophages, and macrophages, they engulf microbes and dead cells. They also release cytokines. There's also dendritic cells, which are they detect abnormal MHC molecules and they can induce apoptosis on infected cells. There's also eosinophils, which are they fight parasites mostly, and they contribute to allergic reactions. There's also basophils, which also promote inflammation and also allergic reactions. Mast cells, they have receptors that cause blood dilation and inflammation when they detect cytokines or irregular occurrences. Cytokines, these are kind of like hormones. They're not receptors. They're signals. They're protein signals, and they are chemical messengers. There's also a complement system, which is a system of proteins, and they can combat um, irregular pathogens through opsonization, inflammation, and cell lysis. Inflammation, this is when the body or cells become inflamed, meaning they become red and hot because they're currently trying to fight an infection. Um, there's also type 1 interferons. These are um, these are cytokines. They're signals. And what they do is that they protect cells from viruses. There's interferon A and interferon B, or I should say alpha and beta, and they release antiviral proteins once known as viruses.
Cells associated with innate immunity will use pattern recognition receptors such as toll-like receptors to find any foreign pathogen, PAMPs, or any damaged cell molecules, aka DAMPs. After detection, the cell will undergo phagocytosis and eat the foreign particle and to then be broken down by enzymes to form antigens. This is an antigen right here. The cell will then ring the alarm that a foreign particle is present in the form of an antigen and start expressing chemokines, which are chemical signals that activate APCs. The APCs will then travel to the lymph nodes. In the lymph nodes, the APCs will take the antigen and begin to show a copy of them using MHC. Now having the specific antigen, the APCs will show a naive, mature T cell. Depending on the MHC, it will determine what the T cell will become. But one thing for sure is that T cells will multiply through colonial expansion into two types of cells, either effective cells, which can turn into either a cytotoxic T cell or a helper T cell, or memory cells. Co-stimulation is a part of activating the immune cells like T cells or B cells, and they serve as a checkpoint in the immune system. It requires two signals though. The first signal detecting the antigen first, and the second signal being a response from the innate immune system. Memory cells, however, only need one signal. So if there are former memory T cells and they detect an antigen, they do not require a second signal, as they have already been through it before. After the pathogen is removed, regulatory T cells will then stop the activation of any new T cells coming in and possibly causing self-harm damage, such as like an autoimmune disease. Cytokines are proteins that are made from innate and adaptive cells. Cytokines are like messengers acting like signals that tell other immune cells when to be activated. They also serve as mediators between leukocytes and other immune cells as well. Our references here are byjus.com/biology/immune system organs and www.biocode, which is where I got these photos from, as well as the photo here being taken from our immune system book. Thank you.